Um, I am going to try to get this done before Jack comes home. Dinner's already done. Just about all I have to do is put on the pasta. And the water's boiling now, so um, it's snowing like crazy outside. It looks like daylight, but it is 8 o'clock. Um, it's pretty. I don't know if you can see. No, you can't really see much out there. Anyway, um, this one I'm gonna do just like my last one. I'm gonna read it. It just seems to go better for me because I don't get sidetracked and it makes more sense in the end. So, I wrote all this down yesterday. So, I left off where we had moved to Anderson to the house on E Street. And there was crazy shit that went on in there. You're going to find out about some of that right now. Okay. So, our first night at 311 East Street in Anderson, we met Danny and Terry Gunter. Danny and Jimmy had a lot to talk about because they're both drummers. I'm not sure what else went on with the guys that night because once the truck got unloaded, it was up to me and Judy and Janice to unpack boxes, hang stuff on the walls, and do all that shit, you know. So all the residents at that time at the house was Judy and Billy Whalen, which were Jimmy and Ralph's mom and stepdad. Ralph and Janice Markham, and their new baby, Angel Markham. Jimmy Markham, and me. Um, so that night, Bill went to bed early. Sorry, because he had to work the next morning. He got a job working as a welder out at Strickland Boat and Marina on 24 out by the lake. So the boys, Jimmy and Ralph, went next door to hang out with the Gunner boys and to enjoy bullshitting with their newfound friends. So us ladies, we just got a good amount of stuff and settling done. So when the clock struck 1 o'clock, I went out on the porch and called over that it was 1 o'clock, and their mom said it was time to get over here and get in the bed. So Judy and Bill had the bedroom upstairs over the living room, and this was like, it was a duplex, but it was opened up. So there were 2 living rooms, and behind those were 2 kitchens, and then up the stairs were a bedroom on each side. And then on the back porch were bathrooms, and it was a mirror. I'm sure if you've seen them houses, you know what I'm talking about. So, the house was really big, fairly empty feeling still because we just moved in. And so everything echoed really loudly. Loud enough, in fact, that we could hear the 38-day wind-up clock in the living room as it ticked. So at some point during the night, I had to pee. So rather than light the house up, I just grabbed this little kerosene lantern that I had by the bed because I hadn't put the alarm clock out yet. See what time it was. So I grabbed that and I went down the stairs and I went to the bathroom. So I went to the living room to see what time it was. When I got to the living room, the clock was stopped and both hands were straight up on midnight. I remember a little while ago it struck 1 o'clock. Okay. So the hands were both on midnight and it was stopped. I didn't think anything about the 1 o'clock thing at the moment because it was the middle of the night. I was freaking sleeping. So I just reached up and hit the pendulum to start it going again. And, sorry. I didn't set the time because the clock would chime every hour on the hour and on the half hour. So it would have chimed just bing, 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 and woke everybody up. So the next morning while we had coffee, Judy commented that the clock time wasn't right. And I said, oh yeah, I got up to pee and, it was up. So I started it. See, those clocks that you wind with a key, they're not electric. You wind them with a key and they run for 38 days. And if they aren't sitting exactly plumb when you hang them up so that the pendulum, the weight is equal on both passes, then it'll stop. It won't work. So we figured that's what the problem was. So Judy set the clock and we went on about unpacking and doing all of our stuff. And it was late in May, so the weather was really nice and warm. And like most spring times, the air was full of bright promises and happy times ahead. it was like a freaking TV show or something. It was all the neighbors were out and about, so we met a lot of people that day, and everyone was nice and friendly. One of the neighbors from down the street, Ruby, had a couple of kids that were close to our age, and they're Margie and Floyd. So we went down there and met them, and everything was fun there. So we felt great about the move. We were glad to be making new friends and feeling welcome to the neighborhood. There were some older adults that were closer to Judy's age, and so she was making friends too. So over the next few days, we seemed to become the central hub for people to hang out. So we always had a card game going at the table, or music on the porch, or in the living room. So it came to our attention that Bill had gotten up and found the clock stopped at 12 twice. By this time, it's the end of the week, and that's starting to feel a little spooky. So the next night, I got up to pee. I made Jimmy come downstairs with me. It just felt odd, you know. You know how it is when we listened closely before going down steps and did not hear that clock ticking. That by itself made my hair stand up. So we went downstairs. There's still no clock to be heard. I used the bathroom, and then he did. Then we went to the living room, and we were listening so hard, and we didn't hear the clock, and the silence was absolutely deafening. We got to the living room, and the clock wasn't moving. It wasn't ticking. He held the lantern up to the clock. Not only was it stopped, and the hands on midnight, but the door was open, and the entire clock itself was hanging at a sharp angle, like this, right? Freaking weird. So the next thing I know, Jimmy's running past me and runs up the stairs to his mom's room. He's banging on the door. Mama. Well, she came flying out of there, and you can imagine how she was. I mean, how would you appear if your teenage son was beating your door down at 3 o'clock in the morning screaming? So the entire house leapt out of bed and came running out, and we all slowly went back in the living room, and everybody was creeped out, and everybody's hair was standing up on the back of the necks and covered in goosebumps and hypersensitive hearing and all that. So Judy went on in and turned the lights on, and we all just stood there looking at that damn clock. It was hanging at that sharp angle, and I mean it was almost a full 45 degrees, with both hands resting on that 12, straight up and tall. The door was wide open. Now, the fact that the hinge was in the higher position on the clock is what really kicked me in the brain. And what I mean by that is, clock was hanging with the bottom skewed to my right. The hinges were on this side of the door on the front of the clock. So you would think that it would lay closed because of gravity, but no, this bitch it's wide open like this. So I'm like, okay, that's just a little too much for me. So Judy just, you know, that just freaked me out. And the room was ice cold. Oh God, it was cold. Far too cold for a South Carolina night. That was nearly June. We hadn't even bothered to have any heat turned on when we moved in the house. So Judy had Bill go back to bed, which he did obediently and immediately. She and Jimmy and Ralph take the clock down, check the angle, make sure it's hanging right, and check all of that shit. And the clock was finally, she said it after it was set up to her satisfaction. So by this time, it's getting closer to daybreak than bedtime. So everybody but Bill, Janice, and the baby had coffee, and we talked about the weird thing with the clock. Now, see, this family, the Markham family, had volumes of experience on me when it came to supernatural things, because this was my first experience with anything supernatural. So, see, I was raised a Southern Baptist, so that's the lens I was looking through at that time. So, to me, this was some seriously important shit to take in. How I accepted, rejected, or disregarded this information is going to decide how an enormous part of my personal philosophy and politics would develop into who I was as a person for the rest of my life. So, think about that just a minute. I was all of 18 years old and knew about life at that time. So I listened closely to what they said, weighed the information against how it made my gut feel, and accepted that the Baptists, God bless them, knew so little. I guess you could say that's when my belief and faith in something bigger was born. But back to the clock, okay? We decided we were going to wait up and see if we could change or prevent it from happening. So once Bill got to bed and it went dark that night, we started processing our plan or agenda, whatever. Once we got past midnight, we started things up into motion. So Judy had us light candles and close the blinds, and we sat on the floor in a circle with a candle and a King James Version Bible in the middle. So it was Judy and Ralph and Janice and me and Jimmy, and then back to Judy. Angel was sleeping in her carrier right there in the room with us. Judy had us have the book fall open to whatever random scripture when she asked a question of it. And yes, the Bible is used as an oracle in this way and many other ways. One of us would read it. Usually it was Ralph. Then we would discuss the scripture and how it should be interpreted in the context of how the question was asked of it. So we sort of had a, and then what attitude toward the whole thing. So the night dragged on and we felt it as we were waiting for something that we weren't sure if we wanted it or not. So around 2:58-ish, 2:59, we heard a ruckus in Ralph and Janice's bedroom. Somebody's trying to break in. Right? So we went into panic mode. Ralph ran out the front door and into the bedroom and grabbed his gun and ran over where the racket was. And Jimmy went through the kitchen and went to go outside. And he was outside with a ball bat. So they're looking for this, So I'm kind of like between the kitchen and the living room, and Janice and Judy are on the porch, and Angel was in the carrier there in the corner. She slept through the whole thing. Now, had I not seen this with my own two eyes, I would have never believed this shit. Okay? So they didn't see anybody outside, never could find who made the attempted break-in. So we go back to the living room and we're all out of breath with adrenaline screaming and all hopped up on coffee and fear, So that room felt like a freezer when we went back in there. Not only was the clock stopped, the hands were, of course, dead on 12. The door was open. The pendulum was out of the clock and laying on the floor face up on the other side of the room in front of the coffee table. Now, this was the living room on a mill house. There were two doors going in or out of that room. One was the front door. One was the door that went into the kitchen. The only other door in there was to a coat closet in the corner behind the front door. Them three went that way. Me and Jimmy went this way. There was no way anyone could have gotten in or out of that room without me running over them or one of them running over them. So, that shit just straight up happened just like that. Of course, all the neighborhood heard about it and offered their own ghost stories and shit about the house and how it was haunted. And Danny Gunter and his first wife had lived there on one side of the duplex. And apparently she was purported to be a witch. And Danny said she set the floor on fire once when they lived there. That certainly didn't keep people from wanting to hang out. It actually made them clamor to. So we had people over nightly until 3 a.m. or so because it seemed they wanted to catch a show. And one of those nights, they finally did. See, that clock stopped every night. It was discovered that it was always between the hours of midnight and 3 a.m. because it never happened before midnight and it never happened after 3. So Judy and Ralph had gotten Ralph to open the clock and put a crucifix in the back corner behind the pendulum in the one corner. In the opposite corner behind the pendulum, she had him put a small Bible. Okay. Then she had him close the door, latch it, wrap it in speaker wire, tie it up, and then between the speaker wire and the glass, there was a gap about this big that was, because of the molding around the door. She had him put a Bible between that. So we figured we were good. So Judy was in the kitchen playing cards with Carl and Leon and Ruby, which were all siblings down the street, the Shermans. And the four of us were in the living room. I think Margie and Floyd were both there. Maybe Danny. I don't know. Anyway, we're just sitting around bullshitting, nothing specific. Jimmy was sitting in the floor in front of the coffee table, fiddling with something he was working on. And I was on the couch. Janice was in Bill's chair. Ralph was standing just inside the doorway there where the kitchen door was. So all of a sudden, the Bible that was between the wire and the glass came flying out like somebody hit it on the bottom. It came flying out over to where Jimmy was, almost hit him, and landed on the floor there. And Janice heard something, and she looked up to her right at the big black velvet picture of Jesus that Judy had hanging there. And this picture was straight up to the wall, and you could hear it scraping, and it was turning. And it kept turning until the nail dropped down into the corner, and then it stopped. The whole damn house freaked out. Everybody's yelling, swearing, crying, confused, not sure if we should shit or go blind. So we just closed one eye and fart mostly. There was all sorts of stuff that happened in that house, and most of it surrounding that clock, though. And then there was Janice's last straw. Everybody was in the bed. Jimmy and me woke up from loud, panicking, talking downstairs. So we went downstairs, and by the conversation that was taking place, we figured out that Angel, the baby, had stopped breathing, and Janice was flipping out, as any mother would. So Judy went over to the crib, and she laid her hand on the baby's chest, and immediately the baby started breathing, and Judy couldn't breathe. So whatever it was went from the baby to Judy. And we're trying to get her into a chair into the kitchen, and Janice is trying to run, grab a cold rag to put on Judy's face because she said she was going to pass out. And Janice kept yelling, "Move, move," trying to get to the sink. So by the time she gets it and she turns around, Judy faints. Janice starts screaming, ran in the other room, grabbed Angel, went out to the sidewalk, and refused to come back into the house. By this time, Judy, we've gotten her to come back and wake up, and she was okay. But Janice noticed that on the seat of Angel's diaper, and I saw it, there were claw marks. There were 3 rips in the seat of that baby's diaper. Okay, wake up call for real. They moved on Janice's birthday, June 12th. So they weren't there maybe 6 weeks. And we continued to live in that house until November of that year, 1982, but not before we met Sister Kitty and Sister Carla. So that's going to do it for today. I think I have figured out the problem with the comments. The comments should be working now. So if you have any questions, if you have any specific person you want to know about, if you want to know about a certain incident, a certain place, a certain year, certain anything, or any questions of any kind, leave me a comment. Tell me what you want to hear. And I'll do my best to give you that history. So I'm going to go and finish my beef stroganoff. Yum, yum, yum. And I will talk to you again really soon. I love you. Think about you every day. I can't wait to see you again.